Shalom. I give all and glory praises to Yahweh, Bashim, Yahushua, Bashim, Kakdash, the bonus to the others, supposed to be most from total truth and sincerity, such as to the hopeful expectation, God from the third. It's going to be another dated verse, dated brand titled Ecclesiastes, chapter 7, verses 1 through 29. Ecclesiastes 7:1 reads, "A good name is precious than precious anointment, in the depth of it, in the day of death, than the day of one's birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart." And ultimately, house of mourning referring to what? We went through that straight and narrow, that straight and narrow path, and not, walking that broad path. All right, where many go to the broad path, but only few to that narrow path, which is serving the Lord, okay, in truth and sincerity, right? Going through your sorrows, right? Sorrow is better than laughter, right? For by the sadness of the countenance, the heart is made better. She goes back to your spirit. Your spirit becomes more stronger, right? It becomes to the point where you're able to endure, different. You're able to deter different lustful pleasures, and you're able to deter many demonic thoughts, right, that comes to your mind, okay? The heart of the wise is at the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is the house of mirth, okay? Which mirth is like, joy, okay? So the heart of the fool is in the house of mirth, right? Which is that, that where many people are in the house of mirth, joy, right? They're not, because this world is not going to, this world, how we know it, is not going to continue to go on how it is, right? It's too wicked, okay? There's no reason to enjoy anything in this world when it's wicked, when it's controlled by the wicked, right? There's no joy, right? So these people are foolish, okay, to think that this world can continue to operate and run like it is, okay? So this is why those who are in the house of the wise, right, is in the house of the mourning, right? Those who are wise are ultimately the elect, right? Because they're in the house of mourning, right? They're not thinking about the continuation of this world, right? They know that there's an afterworld coming. They know there's a kingdom of heaven coming, right? They know that there's about to be death and destruction, right, coming, and salvation and deliverance, okay? It is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool. This is also a vanity. And there's a lot of vanity, going on, okay, across the internet, right, in the world, etc. Surely oppression makes a wise man mad, and a gift restores the heart. True. Better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof. Right, okay? We're heading to the end of our captivity, the end of the wicked rulership, and right, and that's gonna be way better than the beginning of our captivity, the beginning of the wicked and rulership, okay? Because we're gonna rejoice at the fall of our enemy. And the patient and spirit is better than the proud in spirit, okay? And the Lord's all about what? Long suffering, right? He command his anointed, his elect, to be able to endure patiently, right, until his coming, right? Until he take vengeance, to take revenge on our enemies, and which is his enemies. Okay. And you have to be patient. You have to be. The scripture says, "Woe to you that have lost faith." When you lose faith, I mean you lost patience, and ultimately you're gonna be destroyed, right? You know, and that's going back to you know, Paul said, "What? Don't be have unwavering faith." Okay, faith that can be put out. Okay, keep your candlestick burning. Okay, you know, don't become spiritless. Okay, when you don't become without hope. Okay, your spirit shouldn't be so drained, right, weak, that you fall out the truth. Okay, that you lose patience. Be not hasty in thy spirit to be anger, for anger rested in the bosom of fools. Okay, true. You know, and this is why, you know, when people like Jake, you know, when they mock and scoff, we don't get angry, right? We don't be hasty to get angry and curse them out, right? Because that's just a foolish behavior, right? You know, wicked Jakes, you know, when someone just say call their name or call them out their name, one time they get angry and want to kill that person, right? But that's not the type of spirit to be in, right? You can't not let certain things get to you, all right? Especially, you know, if you're in the truth, okay? Because those just demons messing with you, attacking you, testing, or that's just, or in the Lord testing you, okay? Say not thou what is the cause that the former days were better than these, for thou doest not inquire wisely concerning these. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, and by it there is profit to them that see the sun. For wisdom is a defense, and money is a defense. But the excellence of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. Yes, okay. And wisdom, understanding comes throughout the fear of the Lord, okay? For the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge, basically, that's roughly paraphrasing, okay? And those that have wisdom, you know, they ultimately, you know, because when you fear the Lord, that means you know His name, okay? Ultimately, start with His name, all right? You know, and then know His will, right? And that's ultimately you've been anointed by the Spirit, and ultimately, that's a mark. You've been marked, right? You know, for if you're elect, you mark for you receive the mark of Dawah, which is the mark of exemption, which is the spiritual mark, okay? That you are going to be destined for deliverance. Consider the work of the Most High, for who can make that straight which He has made crooked? Right, and the Lord made the wicked crooked, right? He made which word crooked goes back to, ultimately is a symbol. It's a symbol as a wickedness, okay? Base, okay? Unrighteous, okay? Not in order, right? The Lord made the heathen wicked. You cannot turn you cannot turn America to a righteous place, right? You cannot change the minds of, the heathens, okay? To and on this side, you cannot change their mind to become righteous. No, right? They will have to be. They'll be made. They'll still be considered unrighteous. Yes, they will still be considered unrighteous, right? Which is holy, right? Which is separate. In the kingdom of heaven, they won't be, on the level of the Israelites. Okay, they'll be out of the temple. Okay, they'll be on the outer courts, right? Being our servants. Serving us. Okay, being our house slaves. Okay, etc. They won't be on our level, and we cannot fix that. Jake wants so bad to save their daddy Edomite, right? Stockholm syndrome, right? They have that Stockholm syndrome. They're trying to save Esau. Okay, you know, this is why many these Jake out here bucking up against the Hebrew is like, because when we say that the Edomites are going to be destroyed in the heathen nation, they're going to be our slaves in the kingdom of heaven. They get mad and buck up because they want to save them, right? But the only way to save them to make them righteous. Okay, you know, and they're not going to. And they had to fear the Lord, Yahweh. But what the scriptures have said, that the fool has said in their heart, there's no God, and they don't think that there's a power, okay, that is going to defeat them, right? There's a power greater than them, all right? So, you know, that's a pride of the heathens, right? And that's why, you know, the Lord, Yahweh is going to have to turn up, show out, destroy them, you know, and put his chosen nation, his elect, okay, back in rulership to teach these heathens the fear of the Lord. In the day of prosperity, be joyful, but in the day of adversity, consider. The Most High also has set the one over against the other, to the end that man should find nothing after him. Okay? So we're not in the day of prosperity, right? The day of prosperity is the kingdom of heaven. That's when we're going to be joyful. But in the day of adversity, we're considering, you know, the Lord, okay? You know, this is the Lord doing, right? This is a, you know, Lord, he's punishing us. He you know, the Lord does good and evil, right? He give us good and evil times, okay? And people can't realize that, right? People don't realize that the Lord, he does good and evil, because they've been fed this Christian doctrine that Jesus, you know, the so-called Jesus, you know, who is the Yahweh, you know, is all love, care, doesn't do evil, you know, just only do good to the world, right? No, okay. You know, people don't understand that the Lord is to be feared, right? Because of his power, right? You know, his, his mighty words, the fact that he control both sides, both righteous angels, and, you know, he controls the left and the right, right? You know, he's the ultimate director. Okay. All things have I seen in the days of my vanity. There is a just man that perished in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man that gives his life in his wickedness. And this is what David was going to, you know, Psalm 73 about, you know, the wicked, you know, they just seem like they're never going to get destroyed. You know, they're just, you know, living in their wickedness, right? You know, and, you know, just doing all types of evil, right? But the Lord's not destroying them. So, you know, this is basically what David was going to, you know, the wicked, how the wicked, you know, prolong their life, right? In wickedness, okay? You know, they're, you know, the top bankers elite, you know, they become 9 years old, right? You know, and they're just being wicked, okay? You know, but the righteous man, right? You know, brother, for example, you know, can be, you know, in this truth, right, for a period of time, you know, and they don't reach, you know, 70 or, you know, 60, and they die in the faith, right? Um, but no, ultimately, the scripture is about how the righteous are saved from the day of destruction, right? So it's a good thing to, you know, if you're a faithful brother, you know, if you die in the truth, and you're serving the Lord faithfully and sincerity and truthfully, you know, it's a blessed thing, because you don't get to suffer, you know, the during the day of destruction, right? During the day of judgment, right? You know, but you know, we know that we want to continue, you know, we want to continue to the end, right? We wanted to serve the Lord, it goes to serve the Lord until the end, right? Until He calls our spirit back up, until He, tell us, till He tell us that we have, finished the race. Okay. Be not righteous over much, neither make thyself over wise. Why shouldst thou destroy thyself? Okay. So we cannot be righteous over much. Okay. We can't be too righteous in this truth, right? And neither make thyself over wise. People trying to eat all the honey. Just trying to consume all the honey. Which is honey going to this truth, right? But you need time, okay, to digest that honey. You need time to, you know, you need time for yourself, self care, okay. You can't read all day and every day, okay, because then your mind start to become, you know, people. Then when people start to become over righteous and just start to do bug out things, okay, you know. But it's not balanced, right? The Lord here requires balance, okay. You can do some things in the world, right? Especially about using this word, but not abusing. You can do certain things to, calm your spirit, okay, to make you feel like you're still a human, okay. We reading, fasting, praying, all that. That's when we're in our angelic state, right? But we have to come back down to earth and realize that we're human. We still need to self care. We still need to care about ourselves. Eat, okay. Do worldly things, okay. You know, you know, and to keep our what to keep our to not let people know what we do, okay. Hire our left hand for our right hand, okay, or not let your right hand know what your left hand do, okay, or not let your left hand know what your right hand do. But neither make thyself overwise, why should thou destroy thyself? Be not over much wicked, neither be thou foolish. Why should thou die before thy time? Right, we can't be wicked, right? We can't be in that mindset either, okay? Being over much wicked, right? Just living in the, now you just a worldly Jake, okay? At that point, okay? And the Lord, he's not dealing with you, okay? And you ultimately you're gonna destroy yourself, okay? You can cause the Lord to judge you before you're even, delivered, okay? Saved. Is it good that thou shouldst take hold of this? Yeah, also from this withdraw not thine hand, for he that fears the Most High should come forth of them all. Wisdom strengthen the wise more than 10 mighty men which are in the city. Yes, right? Wisdom, which goes back to using, it's not wisdom is a behavior, okay? It's all in the mind, it's all in your spirit, right? Then 10 mighty men, which is that going back to physical, okay, strength, okay, which are in the city, okay. You know, so just think about a prophet, right? A man of the Lord being in a city with just a bunch of, 10 mighty people, okay. That prophet was able to destroy those 10 mighty people, right? It's stronger than those 10 mighty people, right? Because ultimately they had to fear the Lord working with them. They had to fear the Lord under them, and the Lord Yabashan started working with them, right? That's ultimately give them the advantage, okay. You know, for there is not a just man upon earth that doeth good and sinneth not. True, okay. And Yahweh even spoke about that. The only person that does good is Yahweh, okay. Also take no heed unto all words that are spoken. Lest thou hear thy servant curse thee. So eavesdropping, okay? Or there's certain things that we're not supposed to be hearing, okay? Ultimately, okay? For oftentimes also thine own heart knows that thou thyself likewise hast cursed other. All this have I proved by wisdom. I said I would be wise, but it was far from me. That which is far off and is eating deep, who can find it out? Which is wisdom. I applied mine heart to know and to search and to seek out wisdom and the reason of names and to know the wickedness of folly, even of foolishness and madness. Okay. And I find more bitter than death the woman whose heart is snares and nets, and her hands is as bands. Whoso pleases the Most High should escape from her, but the sinner should be taken by her. Right? Okay. And if you're a man of the Lord, right, the Lord, He's gonna make a way, to to put you in a position to escape from a woman, right? That is, you know, is just ruin you, whether mentally, financially, okay, etc. Behold, this have I found, said the preacher, counting one by one to find out the account. Which yet my soul seeketh, but I find not. One man among 1,000 have I found, but a woman among all those have I not found. They show that women are not born righteous. Okay? The women are not born, and on this side, women are not righteous. Okay, they all are harlots. They all have committed whoredom. Okay, worshiping idols, right? You know, but one man or 1,000 men, you which ultimately, you know, you know, or you can find one, right? That is righteous, right? That is true and sincerely, fearing the Lord, Yabba. Though this only have I found, that the Most High has made men upright, but they have sought out many inventions. Okay, which also goes back to the Israelites. Okay, the Lord had made the Israelites upright, right? But the Israelites have sought out many inventions, right? Which is going back to just different things. Okay, to worship idols. Okay, to just go off, right? Because what, it goes back to that garden, right? Eating of that forbidden fruit. Taking on those heathenish customs and ways, right? Now people just living in wickedness, all right. So marinating in wickedness, okay. So I'm close here by giving all honor and praises to Yahweh, Bashem, Yahshua, Bashem, Kadash, and that's something.